you're faced with making a lot of financial cuts. The fundamental question I have is, at the end of the day, what are the fundamental services the government should provide its citizens?
We, like workers, are studying that. But, you've got to have public safety. You've got to have, so talk fire, talk police, talk homeland security. You've got to be able to make sure you can pick up the trash, pick up the garbage. Those are just some basic things that you absolutely have to have. They are services that I think we provide in city government today that, as I look to the future, we can't afford to do it anymore, number one. So we're going to be forced to do something different. And I think we're very close with my team right now in identifying those services that we do that we don't do very well, that we're going to have to allow somebody else to do it. So a big issue that we have in the city of Detroit is our privatization ordinance. And it's not that we want to ship everything to the outside, but we've got to become world-class from a competitive standpoint, and we are not there today. So there are some things that we'll be looking at that we'll be making public probably sometime next month.
Carol, do you have any thoughts?
And your question was?
Well, sorry, what are the fundamental services that a municipal government should provide, especially as the city is forced to make some tough decisions, right?
Well, I do think that the city, of course, is responsible for serving all of its residents and providing those basic things: safety, public lighting, water, all of those things that are important to us as a city. And of course, we like to see them do other things to be engaged in making sure that all kids receive a good education. But I do think the city has to make some choices, particularly at a time when you have shrinking funds. You have to decide about the land and how the land will be used, and that's connected to a lot of other things that are important to the residents of the city. Where you cite schools has to be where people live and where children live. So the city has a really strong role to play in guiding a lot of these issues.
Thank you.
I'd maybe take a slightly different tact by talking about the mayor. Obviously, he's talked about the big short-term challenges in front of him. I think one of the things that the New Economy Initiative is doing and the entire philanthropic community is doing is working together in what I think is a kind of historically aligned way with the leadership of that foundation community to focus on projects that can line up behind the mayor, assist him as he focuses so much attention on these short-term, very, very stressful situations, and keep aligned and seamlessly get our plan together so it becomes integrated into the mayor's plan and it's one plan. I think of the work that Alan Mulally did at Ford Motor Company, where he took a global organization that maybe had many different agendas, and he forced it around the idea, the mantra of one plan, one plan. So if the philanthropic community can stay integrated and aligned, and then make sure that that agenda is totally in keeping with where the mayor is going, then we will have done something, I think, quite different than we do.
Detroit's public schools have, the student population has been more than half in the last decade, partly because of the rise of urban charter schools. How crucial is public education to Detroit's turnaround? And what do you see your specific role being?
I don't think our city can come back without a highly educated workforce. And it starts with public schools, it starts with our kids. I think I said in the beginning of my campaign, it really doesn't matter to me. I'm a product of the public schools in Washington, D.C. I'm not anti-anything when it comes to education. I believe in it, I support it, I've always supported it here. But it doesn't matter to me whether a kid goes to DPS, whether they go to a charter school or parochial school or any of the private schools, as long as they're getting a quality education. And I think from a government standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, that's what we have to demand, and that's what we will demand.
What do you see your role in that?
Well, I think, once again, you know, I have heard a lot of people talk about mayoral control. And I'm not against that. I once again think that if you're going to get something done in a positive way, you've got to be able to measure who's in charge. And as far as our school system is concerned, I've got a lot of things on my plate right now, so I'm not here advocating that I'm ready to take over the school system. But I do believe that for our school system to work, you got to have one person in charge. If that is given to me, if that's a dictate either from the legislature or from our population here in the city of Detroit, then I will gladly take on the responsibility.
Steve, I'd just like to add, obviously, I'm on the staple of education. We all know and care deeply about getting our education in schools where they need to be and creating choices that deliver quality education for every young person, whatever sort they are. But also, we can't let the fact that the schools aren't yet what they need to be an excuse for not contributing to revitalizing Detroit. The cities that have had a rebirth in the last 20 years, whether it's Chicago or New York, did so in spite of the fact the schools weren't what they needed to be. There's a lot of people, a lot of activity that can be grown and driven in our great cities. A lot of people that want to be in cities to do their thing, young and old. A lot of businesses and environment that can be created to support economic growth, which over time contributes to better schools because you get more people, you get more middle-class families living and working in the city. So we can't let the fact that schools aren't where they are be an excuse that we can't do anything. In fact, we must.
Karen, please.
Yeah, I do agree with that part of it, but I don't want us to walk away from the fact that we have an education crisis in our city, that our schools are in trouble. Not only Detroit public schools, but all of our schools. We are not educating children well. We are not preparing young people for 21st century jobs. John did a really excellent job talking about the opportunities for high-tech jobs and energy and advanced manufacturing. We are not preparing young people with the right set of skills. And what we need is a system of schools, no matter what the governance is, that really prepares young people with the right set of skills to make them competitive, and so that they can be prepared for these jobs. Our city, the turnaround to our city is highly contingent on us improving education in this city. I really believe that. And I think there's a group that's working on coming up with a plan that will, in fact, ensure that all children have access to quality education.
Steve, something to add?
Yeah, let me give an example that also is an advertisement for this building that we're in right now, if I can.
Please.
Rick Rogers, the president of CCS, is unfortunately out of the country, couldn't be here. I worked with him for a couple of years on this project, so he said that qualified me for being able to say something about it. The reason I can add it on here is that actually we have a really interesting 21st century school in the middle of this place. Many of you may know that, but some of you may not. We are in a building that used to be called the Argonaut Building, that is maybe one of the most powerful symbols of 20th century automotive might that exists. It was GM's R&D headquarters where Boss Kettering reigned. It was in this very room was the first modern automotive design studio that Harley Earl presided over. All kinds of innovations poured out of this. When General Motors moved downtown, the building was vacant. Matt Cullen, then at General Motors, I see in the back of the room, worked with Rick Rogers to establish this as the next campus of CCS to complement their Cultural Center campus. It is now a completely integrated 21st century school, providing the kind of skills Carol talked about, from middle school all the way through graduate school now, focusing on not only a terrific high-performance education, but a art and design-oriented program. It also opens a pipeline for minorities to get into